All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get our meeting started. For those of you on Zoom, if your name is not appearing on there fully, your full first and last name, can you please either change that or put your full name in the chat so that we have that for a public record, please? The initials aren't going to work for that. So if you can please do that, that would be helpful. All right, it's November 7th, 4 p.m. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll do a roll call of Planning Commission members present first. Howard Tritz, Abby Dahlman, Joey Edwards.
Here.
Lupe Bobadilla.
Here.
Jamie Seifer. And Heather Lind here. County Commissioners, I have Commissioner Mudge.
Here.
Commissioner Marcella.
Here.
And Commissioner Fiedler. Okay. Abby Dahlman is joining right now. Perfect. I have no changes or additions to the agenda. We don't have minutes to approve this evening. We did those on Monday. I'm going to move us right on down to the new business. The reason we're here tonight is for file 22-37, which is Angel View 2, Major Subdivision Sketch Plan Review. This was tabled from this Tuesday, November 14th. The way that we will do this, I'm going to read no, this isn't it. Sorry, I have my little opening statement here. I'm going to read an opening statement that will go through the process of tonight's meetings. If you have any questions, if you're on Zoom, please be sure to raise your hand. Do not have dialogue in the chat amongst each other. If you want to raise your hand or put your name down in the chat to be ordered in line for public comment, we're happy to take it in that way. The Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. The statement I am reading shall be incorporated into and made a part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on a major subdivision sketch plan application under 3.16 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the conditional use permit application, the subdivision sketch plan application, should be approved. In considering that matter, the Commission will address the approval criteria set forth in section 3.16.3H of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed in this hearing will be: 1, members of the Commission and/or the Board will disclose if they have any ex parte communications. 2, the county staff will make their initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their presentation. 4, after that, any persons either supporting or opposing the application may present evidence. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the Commission and the Board. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by the chair. Then the applicant may present any rebuttal evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, please simply say so. The chair will also require that all comments be made directly to the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners, and that there be no dialogue between the applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the Commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will then leave the meeting, and the chair of the Planning Commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of one of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with the recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendation of the Commission. The Commission's recommendation will be in the form of a statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the Commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Okay, hearing none, I will ask each Planning Commission member and then each County Commissioner if you've had any ex parte communications to disclose, and if so, to please disclose those now. I will go Planning Commission member Joey Edwards.
None.
Lupe Bobadilla.
None.
Amen. She may not be all the way.
None, sorry, I'm here.
Heather Lind, also none. Commissioner Munch
None.
and Commissioner Marsala.
None.
Great. We will now move on to staff's presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm actually this evening, I think that it actually is a little more fluid. I'm going to ask the applicant to go ahead and do their presentation first. My understanding, and then staff will follow up if that is okay with the Planning Commission and the board. And so I think, Alan, my understanding is that you might like to be able to screen share to start the presentation for Melissa. So let me go ahead and give you access to, I actually think you have access to share.
And did we get HR Bear?
Oh, and also, quick question. If we could, just before you start, Alan, we just need to clarify some members of the public that are present this evening. So could J.H. Bear, could you give us a first and last name, please, for the record?
John Rousseau,
Can you spell your last name, please, John?
Roussseau.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I think and we have one more. I think that we had a initial and a first name. Did they fix it? Okay. Were you able to get that, Marla, for the record? The other one, let me just clarify. It was
Ravi Kata. I don't know that. Ravi, it's like K. Paul.
K. Paul. I didn't see. Not seeing them. Let me just look here really quick.
And this is Kurt Schweigert. That was mine.
Oh, that was
Great.
yours.
Thank
Oh,
you.
perfect. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you so much. Okay, very good. I'll go ahead and minimize this and turn it over to you, Melissa.
All right, I'm going to stand right here so I can see all of you and you. So thank you very much for being here this afternoon. My name is Melissa Kendrick, and I am the member of the Angel View team that's in person today. So the rest of us are online, and we have a presentation for you, but I know we continued it to today, so I appreciate that extra time on your behalfs. So we do have a presentation. I was going to say we were following you, and you're always very thorough. So we want to add some substance, I think, to Ann's staff report and try to be concise at the same time. So I'm introducing Alan Elias. He is one of the owners of Angel View, and he's going to kind of introduce our team. Are you ready, Alan?
I am. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Ann. So we're gonna follow the agenda here. That the one thing that obviously is not related to Angel View 2 in any way whatsoever, other than the impact it has had on the community, is at Bartlett Gulch. And I feel like this is kind of the elephant in the room. This has been a painful process for everybody involved, so I want to get it out of the way. And I've asked Gunnar, who's one of our water attorneys, to talk about the process of what happened with the Division of Water Resources. We have a lot to celebrate as a community. But go ahead, Gunnar, I'll let you take it away.
Hey, great. Thanks, Alan. Can you guys hear me there in the room?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to address you, commissioners and planning board. As Alan said, my name is Gunnar Paulson, and I'm part of Angel View's Water Council team. And what I have to say tonight is not directly relevant to the sketch plan approval process. As Alan alluded to, he just wanted me to address you and give you an update on the Bartlett Gulch water matters and some recent developments in that case, which, as you may know, Angel View filed a simple water court case in early 2021, claiming water rights for 3 ponds on its property and an augmentation plan and an exchange plan to keep the ponds full throughout the year. When that case was pending, the division engineer's office raised the issue of what was the natural path of Bartlett Gulch, where it comes out of a narrow gulch on Forest Service property, sort of to the northwest of Angel View's property and above David Smith's property. Was it to the west towards the village of Twin Lakes through Gordon Acres, or was it to the east through a natural channel flowing towards Angel View's property and through the David Smith property? And just to be clear, Angel View always wanted the water to go both directions and believed that water always naturally went both directions. In Angel View's expert reports that were filed in that water court case, its experts set forth many, many reasons as to why they thought the water naturally went both directions, and backed it up with lots of evidence from glacial geology to historical situations, and most importantly, the variety of wetlands on the Eastern Fork as well. And with water going both directions, the beaver ponds south of Highway 82 in the village of Twin Lakes stays full, and the beaver ponds and wetlands on the East Fork also stay full. That arrangement has provided plenty of water for firefighting via the natural ponds that are formed on those two branches as well. However, the division engineers, as you may be aware, disagreed with Angel View's position and blocked off the eastern channel that fed the beaver ponds on David Smith's property and the lakes and wetlands on Angel View's property back in September of 2021. And this led to a situation where there was no water flowing in the East Fork towards Angel View, for the entirety of the year, this year, and thus to fill its lake, Angel View had to get what's called a substitute water supply plan from the state engineer, which entitled it to pump water from the beaver pond on the southwest corner of Angel View's property to fill its lakes. And just to be clear, that was not the desired route to go for Angel View by any means. Angel View definitely would have preferred to have the water just naturally flowing as it had for decades down the East Fork and been able to fill its lakes and ponds without water. But that wasn't an option this year, so Angel View decided to pursue this other legal means, which it secured from the state engineer's office. And with oversight from local water commissioners, Angel View did operate the pumping from the beaver pond to fill its lakes earlier this fall, which I understand was the source of some consternation and confusion amongst local community members. But I just wanted to reiterate that Angel View had did not have a choice but to do that, and it acquired the legal right to do that. But going back to the water court case, after about 18 months of litigating, Angel View and the division engineer and David Smith worked out a settlement agreement earlier this month on November 3rd, after a full day of mediation with the judge. And Angel View is very proud of that settlement agreement, which is focused on collaboration and really trying to bring the parties together in a way that will benefit the village of Twin Lakes as well as the parties to that agreement. And it does this by making sure that water goes both directions, both down the East Fork of Bartlett Gulch and the West Fork towards the village of Twin Lakes. And that split will be accomplished, just in short, by sending the county's changed dairy ditch number 3 water rights down the West Fork of Bartlett Gulch, and up to 6 cubic feet per second after that amount will go towards the branch of Bartlett Gulch. And further, any additional amounts beyond that 6 CFS will go back down the West Fork of Bartlett Gulch. So that arrangement means that water will flow down the West Fork to the point where there's a split between the east to the southeast and the southwest, and allow the water to continue to flow into the very picturesque beaver pond that Twin Lakes Village is famous for. So just to kind of sum it up, Angel View is proud of that essentially a win-win-win settlement agreement, and greatly appreciates the efforts of the division engineer and his staff and David Smith in developing it. And while there are many more steps that have to take place to fully realize and implement that settlement agreement, Angel View is is very happy with it and confident that it's put some of these Bartlett Gulch issues behind us in a way that benefits the entire community and really lays the groundwork for a prosperous water future throughout the Twin Lakes community.
Thank you.
With that, I would turn it back over to Alan and let you guys get on with the business that you came here to do tonight.
Thank you, Connor. I appreciate you giving us the information. Yeah, I truly feel like, I said elephant in the room, but I think it's more than that. I think that this whole Bartlett Gulch issue has divided our little community. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions, probably on both sides. Before I introduce the team, I will put the slide up. I think it's only appropriate that as the founder of Angel View, that I at least take ownership for some of those mistakes. And we did make mistakes along the way. And I'm very sorry for that. The pumping was obnoxious. It was loud. It's not something we ever wanted to do. We just wanted water to run like it has been for probably thousands of years. We desire a close relationship with our community. We desire really the ability for us to be united. It's a small community. What happened with the Division of Water Resources, this was a really big deal. And I think we had 5 days of mediation ordered by the judge and then 5 days of court in December scheduled. We accomplished in 1 day what many thought wouldn't happen. And the only reason that happened is people were willing to work together. We stopped focusing on our own agendas, including Angel View. And we started looking at what is the right thing for Twin Lakes. And I am incredibly proud of what we accomplished. We're going to have an event and invite our new friends, because we became friends with the folks from Division of Water Resources, and to a party to celebrate in the spring. And certainly we'll be inviting community members as well. Anyway, I just want to get that out of the way before we moved into the agenda from where we're at. But let me move along now. So developers, you'll recognize a new young man on the team here, Ravi Kata. Ravi, if you can raise your hand for a minute, I'm going to have you speak in a minute as well. So Ravi is also from Austin. He's I'll let him speak for himself, but he has come in to really help support me with the Angel View project, Angel View LLC, that 70 acres, along with the Angel View 2 project. We also have another project in Chaffee County that we're working on together. Ravi shares the same goals that I have. We, as you know, and I know that it seems shocking that what we're doing with Angel View, what we would consider from a marketing standpoint, Angel View 1 and 2, as being a lot of many lots. We think it's a whole lot less than certainly places like Pan-Arc, and we believe that we're living soft on the land and that we're really trying to protect and preserve nature. That's really critically important to us. But Ravi, if you can speak for a minute about your philosophy and development, maybe a little bit about your background, just take a minute or two, and then we'll dive into the rest of the agenda.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Ravi Kata. Basically, entrepreneur at heart, investor on the real estate and technology companies, etc. Basically, my philosophy is always find a win-win long-term relationship, period. There's nothing else works. If you don't have that win-win long-term relationships, it becomes always challenging. The way that I say is universal truth is you put good out there, so good happens to you, period. If you do anything beyond that, anything not good, that will come back to you. So it's in our best interest to always try to find that win-win long-term and doing good. That's what my philosophy is. And going back to this project, I brought my family, stayed on Angel View for a week. I fell in love. And we said, okay, this is the place that we want to build a house. And this is the place that we can really have that amazing experience. Twin Lakes is a real gem. I mean, it is an amazing place. Not many people know, not many people really embrace, enjoy that thing. So when Alan approached me, I said, okay, this is it. Let's go. Let me help you. Let me go ahead and be part of this thing. And then I fully committed in helping in all these multiple projects. And always I've been telling that let's find this middle ground. Let's find this what works for all of us. So for this particular project, we are working very closely with all the parties involved. It's not just only our investors, future residents, also the county. I mean, obviously these projects are pretty massive. It generates a lot of tax dollars. So hopefully it'll help in a big way in terms of what county is trying to do in terms of emergency services or affordable housing, et cetera. And then also our neighbors. Philex is really a small, amazing community. We want to work with them closely. And also the other parties, like, for example, Colorado Trail Authority or the campgrounds. And we are trying to build this in such a way where the project doesn't not necessarily, it's not a huge community where it disturbs a lot of land or anything like that. It's very tiny, minimal number of units, etc. So we're trying to preserve the land, trying to make it much more meaningful. So overall, everybody can really enjoy this thing. And hopefully we will achieve that one. And with that first win, since I came on board, all of us being a win-win-win kind of partnership on the water side. And then hopefully we can keep doing this thing and make this as a real good project for all of us to embrace. And then hopefully we can really make it meaningful for everybody involved. And that's pretty much it. But and I'm sure if there are any questions or anything else at later point, happy to address it. But with that said, thank you and look forward to working with all of you guys. I'll give it back to Alan.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi. So land use attorney Bart Johnson, if you can raise your hand, Bart, so they recognize you. Everybody probably remembers and knows Melissa, knows and loves Melissa. Everybody does. We've got a new engineering team on board, and Don, I guess Don's not on board today, but Brian and Jacob, if you can raise your hands. And then Steve is not here, but Gunnar, you just heard from Gunnar, our water attorneys. That'll be important for the potable water decree that we'll need. David Glader is our geotech engineer. They've done a tremendous amount of work on Angel View 1, and that'll be helpful here. Water engineers, Craig and Bill are not here, but they will be helpful in the future. Everybody knows Craig by his wonderful laugh. Ecologist Heather Houston, traffic engineer Mike Rocha. And over back to you, Melissa. And I think we'll introduce Bart right now. So
Exactly. Bart Johnson is our attorney, as Alan said. So Bart, do you want to give the project overview?
Can everybody hear me?
Very well.
Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, I'm the land use attorney, and I'm really going to talk not really specifically about legal issues, really, but just to do a project overview of Alan and his team's approach to the project and kind of our sense of why we're here today and kind of what sketch plan means. The first point I wanted to discuss briefly was just the relationship to the first Angel View project that's nearing the finalization of the final plat. This is in some sense an extension of the first Angel View project. I wanted to just, as a technical matter, kind of clear the air that this really isn't a second phase of that project. A second phase of a subdivision would be one that's within the same preliminary plan and was approved pursuant to the same sketch plan and preliminary plan, and then it gets finally platted in phases. And here, obviously, we're talking about a new subdivision that's next door to a previously approved subdivision. There will be some connections between the two that we think are helpful in meeting some of the approval criteria. For example, the efficient kind of spatial layout criteria that we'll get to later. But we're technically not a second phase within one subdivision. I just thought I'd clarify that. The second point I wanted to discuss briefly, which I think Ann will probably talk on, and she mentions it in her staff report, is just kind of the overall purpose of sketch plan review. This is the first step in a 3-step process. Sketch plan is intended to be kind of a conceptual preliminary look at the overall layout of a subdivision. It's to get an initial read on what merits the subdivision has, what questions need to be addressed, what potential issues are out there before either the applicant or the county devotes real significant resources to detailed planning and analysis and all the engineering and technical work that go into really, getting into the details in the subdivision. So this is a way to get initial impressions. And then in the preliminary plan phase is when all that real roll up your sleeves detailed work gets done. That said, Alan's team has already put a fair amount of thought into this project and probably has advanced some of the engineering type issues probably farther than you typically would in a sketch plan, but I think that's all for the better. And then I wanted to mention kind of a few high points kind of thematically in how Alan and his team have approached this project. The first is obviously this is a low density, intended to be a low impact, single family residential subdivision on 80 acres with 21 lots. So you're looking at, less than 1 home per 3 acres. The lots at a minimum are 3 acres in size, which complies with the zoning. Some of them are larger than that. The benefit of this project being adjacent to the original Angel project is you can avoid some duplication of infrastructure, both in terms of extension of a secondary access, because it'll already be there, potentially some connection of utilities, and looping of utilities potentially, some sharing of the community facilities that are planned for Angel View, the original Angel View project, without having to build duplicate facilities in the second project. There is a strong theme of dedication of public open space planned for this project, as will be shown, and some of you I'm sure already know. The Colorado Trail runs through a portion of this private land. They have designated that corridor for being dedicated to the public on this proposed plat, and created significant buffering to create space from the existing Colorado Trail, which will help in that the trail wouldn't need to be moved, and also it will give public ownership to a portion of land that's currently private, through which the trail has just kind of been passing for years. Another component which we'll get to is that Alan and his team are committed to, or making an affordable housing, a real effort on affordable housing in the way of a concrete commitment. We've got a few ideas that we'll touch on later. And then one of the imperatives from Alan to his engineers and the other designers was, we're going to comply with all the development code and road standards without any variances across the board. That's from use to development standards to road standards, minimum lot sizes, et cetera. So with that, I think Melissa, I guess we turn it back to you and you guys can start reviewing the actual plan.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Thank you, Bart. The next up is Brian Williamson. He is with TST Engineers, and we have been working together on the layout of this subdivision. So Brian, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to meet together today. I think this is a great project that we're really excited about. I want to just kind of generally walk you through what we're doing for the sketch plan. This slide just kind of shows the project location. You can see the red box that is just to the north of Highway 82, north of Twin Lakes and north of the Twin Lakes Village, kind of right adjacent to Highway 82 there. So that kind of shows everybody where we are in the world. And then we can go to the sketch plan. So this is the sketch plan. So we've done a rendered version. It's a little bit easier to read than the kind of approval version that's more black and white. This kind of shows you that there's 21 residential lots. There's a road network that serves those parcels. The roads have been conceptually designed so that we can comply with all of the standards for Lake County. Also, we're showing those lots in a tan shaded color. And then an area of influence is kind of that brighter yellow color. The yellow color, the area of influence is 20% of those lots. So each lot is 3 acres. So about 20% of those 3 acre parcels. The area of influence is really where you would see any housing or building development happening on the property. Anything outside of those we'd be trying to preserve those areas aside from the required utilities, driveways, and any kind of grading tie-outs that need to happen outside of those. But you'll see that those yellow areas will be the clusters of development that happen while we're trying to preserve that natural landscape in the rest of the project. We can go to the next slide. So this is our land use table shown underneath the graphic. So you can see that there's 21 lots that comprise 65 acres of the project, about 80% of the land area. We have trails, we have open space tracts that total 6.9 acres, which is about 8.5% of the project. And then there's roads for both the internal circulation and then the existing Highway 82 right of way that come out to about just a little over 11% of the project. The next slide kind of walks through kind of our open space. So we have 3 open space tracts, one on the very north that Bart talked about a little bit that includes the Colorado Trail. Then we have another open space tract on the northern edge as well that provides some buffer from a spur trail. And then we have a third open space tract that's all the way in the southeast corner of the site. We've kicked around a couple opportunities there. Clearly, it's a small parcel that wouldn't be appropriate for any kind of development, but I think there's some interest from the ownership group to kind of do some sort of memorial there or kind of create a community asset there that's very, very passive, but just kind of showing some support for our veterans in Lake County. When you add the open space tracts that are shown in green there with the remainder spaces outside of that yellow area, you end up with a total of about 58 acres or 72% of the project. So the real message that we're trying to say right now is that we're really leaving most of that property kind of in its natural state while trying to make it as minimum impact as possible on the land as we develop. There's a couple of key areas that we wanted to focus on so we could make sure that everybody understood kind of our approach to these, especially along the northern border. So we go to the next slide that looks at the Colorado Trail. So this is a zoom in on that open space tract that's on the northwest corner. So it's a 5.5 acre tract. The Colorado Trail is shown as it runs through the property there. So we have given quite generous buffer there. So it's 108 feet to the closest lot line. And then we have about 242 feet to the closest area of influence. Those distances are kind of, horizontal differences, but there's also quite a bit of grade across the site. Actually running from the southeast to the northwest, it climbs about 450 feet. So even though those look like they're kind of close, I mean, 242 feet is not that close, but there is quite a bit of grade separation there. The Colorado Trail is perched very high on the project, and then everything else kind of steps down in tiers. So just trying to show that we're creating that buffer space. That lot 14 has about 257 feet to there. Now, all of these distances are kind of approximate estimates at this point. As we move through the preliminary and final platting phases, all of those areas will get tighter, and then we'll be able to come back. But the intent is there. I think I wouldn't expect to have a substantial deviation from those areas. The other area that we're quite close to is the Lakeview Campground. So we have specifically designed the site so that those close adjacent lots there, lots 9 and lots 12, are the areas of influence. We're tucked away from the campground as much as possible. And so we've got about 460 feet from lot 12, which is the closest area of influence to the campground. And then our road is about 218 feet away from the campground. There is a little spur trail there that comes from the campground up to the Colorado Trail. We're about 123 feet away from that spur trail. So we're really just showing that we're trying to provide a fair amount of buffering here from where we're impacting the land to the our existing kind of areas that are public usage on the periphery of the project. I think that's kind of the overview of the sketch plan. I think we can turn it now to Melissa for the conditions of approval.
Yeah, great. So there are 11 conditions of approval, as you read, recommended with any approval of this application. So I wanted to start by saying we are in agreement with these conditions, with the exception of number 7, which I know there's some tweaking that we're doing of that language. I think Anne will address that because you were working on that, I think, yet this afternoon. So so I'll just walk through them one at a time. So the first one has to do with our alignment with the comp plan. And we talked a little bit about this, but in I think it was October, I met with Jackie Wellahan was here. Those people on the screen can't see that, but we had a good discussion, and we watched the evolution of the housing authority, which is a really exciting development in the county and a really important one. And we also know it's early in that process of really understanding what are meaningful contributions that we can make. So I think we really agreed at that time to continue that conversation and continue to work with how can Angel View contribute in a meaningful way. And as Bart said, we want to make a concrete contribution to this effort because we know affordable housing is a really important issue here. And we also know that Twin Lakes is not necessarily the best place for affordable housing. It's very far from services. So it probably looks like something else. And we'll figure out in the coming months as we develop the preliminary plan what that might be. Bart, did you want to add anything to that?
I'll address that when we get to the criteria of approval, Melissa. I'll talk about it then in a few minutes.
So the second one has to do with emergency response. We worked very closely with Steve Boyle. It was pointed out that maybe we didn't work as closely with the Sheriff's Department or the Office of Emergency Management. So I've reached out to them in the last few days. But we have worked closely with Steve, and we will work closely with, Claire Skeen. I called her on like her 4th day in her job. So I'm like, here we are. Oh, is that you? Yeah, we haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
So so that was really important that we develop a relationship and figure out how can we help reduce any impact to level of service. That is important to us. With Steve, what we have done is make sure that the road design in particular really works. And so access, we worked with emergency access in the previous application, and in this one, we're doing a similar thing. What really pleased the fire district is that we are not required to do sprinklered homes, but we are going to require homeowners to sprinkler. And that really takes a big burden off fire. So that's an important one. We'll have a cistern, a 10,000 gallon cistern in 81, and we'll have another one in 82. And so Steve's pretty happy about that. He said it'll take as many. So right now we're starting with 1, but that's good. We also did, I think, the first fire mitigation plan of an applicant in Lake County. And so we did that with 81. We'll commission the U.S. Forest Service to do a similar thing for 82. So it'll really be an extension because it's all the same forest, right? So how we manage that will be important. And we will work directly with the Sheriff's Office and the Office of Emergency Management as we develop the preliminary plan. So I think those are the important items there. The third condition involves engineering. We'll work with on preliminary plan. On 4, we agreed to a fee in lieu for the school district as we did on 81. On number 5 is the determination needs to get made on our public land dedication. And 5 and 6 relate to each other, as you saw. So I'll just address them together. We, this morning, had a meeting. It took a while to get this meeting and it happened to be today. But it was with the Colorado Trail and the Continental Divide Foundation. So what I didn't know until this morning was that that trail is co-located. I think that's the right term. So it's both in that location, the one that we're showing here. So they're pretty excited. It was a great meeting to work with us. And in fact, one of the gals said, "You're giving us a longer runway than we usually get." And I was like, well, that's good to hear, because we were feeling a little pressure right now that we're not further along. But what we did learn is that they want to keep the trail where it is, and that the county is going to need to be a participant because they can't accept land. So as a land dedication, it continues to make sense to us. But there's a lot of parties involved, a lot of partners in this. But it sounds like because it's a Continental Divide Trail, it's a constitutionally funded trail. So there's a lot of money that can be brought to bear in helping us establish the necessary land and easements. So anyway, that's good news for 5 and 6. We will work, obviously this will take some months to develop, and we will bring that back to you as we move forward. The 7th has to do with the issue of noise. We kind of brought it up, Gunnar brought it up at the beginning. You know, those pumps were enough that we'll probably never end up, we'll hear about that for years to come. But our hope is that we can, in this process with construction, we agreed to the 8 to 7 restriction on hours of construction. We need to work with the noise because 70 decibels at the boundary is low. It's like maybe this room and this conversation, right? So that we can't construct something and keep to that level. So, and we'll address that and we'll talk about it. So number 8 involves our water supply plan. We were successful the first time. We will follow the same pathway for this Angel View 2. Number 9 has to do with our wildlife friendly improvements, and our CCNRs include for Angel View 1, and they will for Angel View 2, wildlife friendly fencing. People can't have bird feeders. You got to pay attention to your trash and so on and so forth. So we work well with the U.S. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and we'll continue to do so. 10 is the 2 leach fields, and our soil suitability studies as we move forward will be much more detailed as they were with AV1. And so we will demonstrate 2 leach fields. And then finally, the last one is really sort of a general catch-all. So we'll work with that as we need to. So I think that covers the conditions of approval. And I'm going to turn this back over to Bart to finish this presentation. This was number 7. I think we can move past that one, Alan. All right.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap up things for the sketch plan presentation from the applicant, just to review the 6 approval criteria that are contained in that subsection H of the development code that Ann referred to at the beginning of the meeting. Ann's staff report has done a good job of going through these approval criteria. So I'm not going to belabor ones that I think have been already pretty well addressed. I'm going to focus on areas I think where Ann probably wanted to see more from us and maybe some more discussion or some more thought. I'll touch on it on all 6, but I'm going to spend more time on some than others. The first criterion is the consistency with the comprehensive plan, which is obviously an important one. And that's one that probably warrants a little more discussion. So this area of the county falls within what's designated as the rural and remote area under the comprehensive plan. And the rural and remote area is kind of an interesting designation because, especially with respect to this property and some of the other areas around here, because this property is kind of an anomaly. Because the rural and remote area really focuses on, and what it's intended to apply most to, is parcels in the backcountry that are beyond the paved road system and that are only accessible by dirt roads or rough roads that make that put a strain on county services when you think about snow plowing, emergency access, maintenance, and things of that nature. So this property is an anomaly in that it has frontage on Highway 82. So it has direct access to a very robust paved road system in the form of a state highway. And we think that makes it a little bit different than some of the other, or probably a large majority of the parcels within the rural and remote area, and makes it more appropriate for development of this type, especially if it's low density, single family residential type uses that preserve a lot of the land as we're proposing. So the overall intent of the rural and remote district is to encourage low impact development, and that won't create a new burden on the extension for county services, and we think we're consistent with that. As far as the services themselves, Melissa's already touched on that, but the fire district has already indicated that they're basically satisfied that this project will be serviceable by them without creating a great burden, and has encouraged us to really focus on conversations with the sheriff's office and the Office of Emergency Response, which we're in the process of doing. And especially, she's asked us to focus on making sure that we're not going to cause a degradation in existing levels of service. And if there's some concern that we will, then to figure out how to address that, which we're fully committed to doing. The other point that Ann made is that in 2018, the comprehensive plan was amended with some additional, for a number of different reasons, but one of the amendments kind of put a additional emphasis on affordable housing. And we've thought about this, and I believe Melissa has already had a conversation with Jackie, which and we started thinking about the role of the newly formed housing authority. And what we'd like to do, and we have a few different ideas, and I'm sure there are others out there, is make some kind of concrete commitment to the housing authority and to the county to help promote and develop affordable housing. And this could come in one idea, which we've had, which I personally have implemented on other projects, would be to impose by private covenant a real estate transfer assessment on the sale of these lots that would exist in perpetuity. So every time there's a sale, a percentage of the purchase price would be payable to the housing authority. Those are typically in the 1% range. And for example, I just did one in Eagle County a couple of years ago for a project that is now coming out of the ground. And it is raised in rough numbers by $200,000 for the Eagle County Housing Authority in just a couple of years based on lot sales. That's a different type of project. It involves some commercial product as well as residential. But 1% over time adds up in a big hurry, especially in a residential subdivision where you can have, typical turnover every 5 to 7 years of 21 lots. That can create a very effective ongoing revenue stream, and could also provide a model for other projects in the county potentially. Another idea would be obviously be a lump sum contribution, one-time lump sum contribution up front to the housing authority. And another idea would be for us to actually get involved in building some affordable housing. Twin Lakes may not be the best area for that, but Ravi has a lot of experience with development and including some housing development of affordable housing. And there might be other places in the county where it's appropriate, where this project could help facilitate that in some way. So bottom line is we're open to a lot of different ideas and are committed to doing something concrete. I'd like to move on to the next standard in the approval criteria list, and that's consistency with the land development code. Anne did a good job in the staff report of addressing these, and Melissa's original application did as well. And I think there's only maybe a few questions about that. One was, there is a scenic overlay district issue for the parcel on the south side of Highway 82. It's within the scenic overlay area. So depending on, what that dedicated use becomes, if it's some kind of veterans memorial, it'll be subject to a site plan approval process. We're committed to following the code on that. There's no doubt about that. The use regulations, development standards within the code, roadway design standards, all those kind of empirical objective criteria that we have to comply with. The project's being designed to comply with all those, and it will comply with all those. So we don't anticipate any issue on land development code compliance. The third criteria is a efficient spatial pattern. And this is basically the idea that you want subdivisions that are kind of a natural extension of where development already is, where you don't have odd leapfrogging of development or kind of irrational extension of services or new roads for no reason, no good reason, often undeveloped areas. Anne's already addressed this. She agrees that this project represents an efficient spatial development pattern. We agree with that. The fourth criteria for approval is suitability for development. And under the land use code, this really focuses on kind of physical kind of issues with the land that might make it inappropriate for development, such as steep topography, avalanche hazards, geologic hazards, things of that nature, environmentally sensitive areas. And staff report does a good job of addressing this issue as well. This land is generally suitable for development. It is not burdened by things like avalanche paths or bizarre hazardous issues or things of that nature. There is a wildfire issue in this entire area of the county. We've got a pretty good program for how to address that in a responsible way that we can take from the original Angel View project. There's a robust wildfire prevention plan that was developed in consultation with the state of Colorado's forestry group, and we would expect to follow a similar program for Angel View 2. The fifth criterion is compatibility with surrounding land uses. And this is obviously an important one. There's a lot of thought has gone into this project to ensure that it's suitable. That it's compatible with the surrounding land uses. We've already talked about the Colorado Trail. We've talked about the low density nature of the project, the fact that it's single family residential use. There are other uses permitted within this zone district that are more commercial in nature. There's duplex residential development that's permitted. There's bed and breakfasts and things of that nature that are permitted. We're limiting this to single family residential. Over 70% of the site will be preserved and basically undeveloped. There's buffers being honored from the campground and buffers in addition to the grant of the public open space for the trail to ensure even further separation from the trail. So we believe, if you look around in the surrounding area, we have residential development to the west in the form of Gordon Acres. We have Pan Arc and the residential development to the east. And we believe this project, compares quite favorably to those. And in a lot of cases is less dense than the development around it. And then the final criteria for approval is adequate facilities and services. And we've already touched on this some with the fire department, the sheriff's office, the Office of Emergency Management. We will continue to work with those service providers. And then you have utility services. The will serve letters are coming in. I I think we have electric and telephone accounted for. Water, obviously, we'll be providing through wells. And in the application materials, you may have seen there was an initial kind of assessment of the availability of well water that was followed up just last month with a much more detailed assessment of the underlying aquifer and the impact the proposed 21 wells will have on this aquifer. I think that report does a really good job of kind of addressing concerns that there may be with adequacy of groundwater, the effect on the groundwater. And what it comes down to is there's a big aquifer and we'll have a very small effect on it with these residential wells. So with that, I think that covers the 6 approval criteria. Again, the written materials that you have go into a lot of these in a lot more detail, but we feel very good about them in response to Ann's report, and feel like, especially during the preliminary plan process, that we'll be able to really drill down on any areas of concern and make sure they're satisfied. And that's it for me.
And that does conclude our presentation. We appreciate your patience on all that. I probably went longer than we even expected it to, but we covered the material we thought was important. So we'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, Angel View team. So the applicant has done a good job at going through, what the purpose of sketch is. This is just a generalized discussion of the apparent merits and the perceived problems of a particular subdivision proposal. This is definitely a conceptual stage, and we're at those first initial steps. This application has been referred out to the following agencies, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about their response to the application, but it has been sent to the Lake County Emergency Operations, Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue, the Lake County Sheriff, the Lake County Environmental Health Department, the State Water Engineer, Colorado Geologic Survey. At this point in the review, don't typically do this until preliminary, so it will be sent to them in the next stage. However, when we did Angel View 1, it became relevant because of the landslide issue in this area. And so there was quite a bit of geologic hazard investigation done in Angel View 1 that has served well in Angel View 2. Lake County Public Works, Lake County School District, the Colorado Department of Transportation, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the Colorado State Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the Colorado Trail Foundation, the Continental Divide Trail Foundation or Coalition, Chaffey County Commissioners, Sangre de Cristo Electric Association, the Lake County Conservation District, and the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority. We're all members of the review and discussion with staff. As stated by the applicant, the discussion that we received from the Lake County Emergency Operations and Lake County Fire Rescue were the first items discussed in the staff report. The fire marshal talked about the merit of having these homes sprinkled, as well as the cisterns. I would suggest that is would be necessary, although we are in the midst of looking at the wildland urban interface code, and we have been doing wildfire mapping and mitigation and planning efforts. This would just correlate to something that is a community need. And so while the applicant has done this voluntarily, I do think that this is something that's coming forth in our community. The fire marshal also made some other notations about different requirements to be consistent with the fire code that has been provided to the development team and are included in the staff report. During the sketch plan for Angel View 1, the EOC discussed creating social awareness for new residents and emergency services that may not be as available as the target buyer might expect in a rural area of Lake County. And so as they've already made a dedication and commitment to working more closely with the EOC and to the Sheriff's Office. I think these are essential elements to developing this second home and resort home community. This is unlike any other development that Lake County has processed before. And I think some careful planning should go into the creation of that. The Lake County Sheriff did participate in the community development team review with the applicant. We meet with applicants before they ever propose an application, just to provide some early direction, as well as gain information to share out with different agencies, local agencies. And so I think it's great that based on the conditions, the developer is already working together or intends to work together with the Sheriff's Department to just look at how to maybe do some preventative measures, maybe working through the homeowners association and maybe through covenants. Maybe there are some ways to design some emergency planning efforts, as well as maybe some emergency prevention. Going to kind of skip ahead just a little bit, but the existence of the Colorado Trail, when I spoke to the representatives from both the Continental Divide and from the Colorado Trail, they discussed that there's thousands of hikers on the trail system, and eventually there are some bad players among those. And so just having some situational awareness and some good emergency planning, even from that aspect alone, would serve this development well. Lake County Environmental Health did respond, and code does require a primary and backup leach field opportunity on the sites with an analysis of the soils. And so there was a presumption by the applicant's representative that they would generally be a 3-acre lot could serve a backup. We would just suggest that these are there's a conservative percentage of the 3-acre lots that are only included in the areas of influence. So I'm looking forward to getting more analysis on the possibility of suitable soils in that area for the primary and backup leach fields. The state water engineer has given the following information, that they do not have a water supply form that's been submitted yet. They gave several different requirements that need to be submitted to the division in order to move forward in the analysis. The applicant did furnish, as stated, a more detailed water analysis, which has been forwarded already to the Department of Water Resources for analysis. But there is further work, as evidenced in the staff report, that needs to be done on the water supply. We have received more detailed information than the preliminary application, which was beneficial to providing more detail. The application, it wasn't really spoken about this evening, and I'm not sure if the applicant is no longer looking to potentially approach Lake County about their augmentation plan and the water enterprise, but staff did talk about that. It still is premature to solidify a water supply plan through the Lake County Water Enterprise, but as Lake County might not be able to move forward with that discussion at sketch, there may be an opportunity at a later date. The Colorado Geologic Survey and CTEL Thompson talked about that a little bit more in discussion within the staff report, but basically there is a definite benefit to the work that's already been done by CTEL Thompson to serve well the development of Angel View 2. Lake County Public Works, their response to staff were that these are going to be private roads, both maintained and with snow removal, and but they still must be designed to Chapter 10 standards. We've heard from the applicant that is their intention. The code does allow for considerance of variances from the code, but again, we've heard that they're not going to seek any variances. The Lake County School District, at the time of the writing of the sketch plan review, we do not have a letter from them confirming communication with the applicant. There is a formula within the code that is $1,009 per lot. So that's estimated at $21,189. We have heard from the applicant that they're going to choose the fee in lieu versus a land dedication. So we will be looking at preliminary for them to have had the discussion with the school district and confirmation from the district that the fee that is appropriate. Colorado Department of Transportation responded that due to a traffic volume by more than 20%, they will need to have a traffic study in order to review the access permit. And there is a condition within the suggested conditions that addresses that. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, while they identified that to the best of their knowledge, there are no threatened or endangered species at or near the site, and they do not foresee significant impacts to wildlife or wildlife habitat. There were an array of suggestions for best practices that have been included within the conditions of approval. The Colorado State Forest Service, Adam Moore, has worked with Angel View 1 to do a fire mitigation plan and does intend to work with Angel View 2 to do the same, with the same findings that this is a very severe danger, fire danger level with Angel View 2, as was present in Angel View 1. The U.S. Forest Service and the Colorado Trail Foundation spoke to both, and also to the Continental Divide Trail Coalition, who indeed does have a co-location on a portion of the trail. And as mentioned, they would not be interested in rerouting this. The most advantageous method of addressing this would be an easement. And so the staff report includes a condition suggesting further coordination and confirmation from all the parties and stakeholders involved with a mutually acceptable resolution on how to address the trail. Sangre de Cristo provided just some guidance on some required need for utility easements and some guidance. The Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority included a discussion about the need for affordable housing and the housing needs within our community and the impact that Angel View 2 will have on the local community. And there was a suggestion that was included within the materials in the packet for a contribution or a method by which to work with the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority to address that need and the impact that Angel View 2 will have on the community. So Bart talked a little bit about the staff observations. I would agree with him that the rural remote the remoteness of this area doesn't quite align with the other identified future land uses as rural remote. However, it is still rural. We already are a single engine response community that it is challenged when we have a response on Highway 91, potentially an event within the city of Leadville, and then the ability to respond in the southern corridor of our community. So I do think that while it may not be remote in the fact of accessibility to roadways, it still is rural, and it still is a challenge for, sorry, I'm going to admit someone real quick. It's still a challenge and a strain on our existing level of service. The diversity in housing, I think that the applicant has done a good job of suggesting some out-of-the-box potential remedies. And I think that the Leadville Lake County Housing Authority and Executive Director Jackie Wheelahan would be very excited to talk to Bart about some potential ways in which that they might be able to mitigate any additional need that the development would place on the community. So looking forward to hearing more about that, as I'm sure the Regional Housing Authority Executive Director would be as well. The finding of compatibility with surrounding areas. We did talk about basically being a good player. That means things like noise pollution, dark sky compliance, and working hours of development and construction within the subdivision. And so, as Melissa pointed out, the decibel level that was suggested within the conditions, I have revamped that to align with Colorado statute. It's more nuanced in its approach to how noise pollution is measured and allowed, as well as it creates an opportunity for a basis for enforcement going forward if there were ever issues. So that condition was updated and sent to everyone. But basically, so the applicant knows, it's just a condition that aligns that noise will be consistent with the state statute, instead of calling out an exact decibel reading. The applicant has done a good job of going through the sketch plan criteria and findings that must be made in order for gaining an approval on this application. And staff has talked about those as well. The comp plan, I've already spent some time talking about. It does appear that the applicant is willing to look at ways to better align with the comp plan. Consistency with the Lake County Land Development Code, something that wasn't really discussed within the applicant's presentation, was that the potential for a veterans memorial on the south side of Highway 82. It was contained within the application, and staff just highlighted, while the application said that there was no impact to the SCO, just that entire parcel is within the scenic conservation overlay and would be required to have a site plan review. There's just a highlight in there that all of the engineering review will be done at preliminary. Angel View 1 got the benefit of having some engineering review just based on the geologic hazards and concerns that were highlighted at the sketch plan. I think the applicant suggested that they had done more work potentially than some sketch plans do at this point in the development process. However, I would suggest it was absolutely prudent given the geologic concerns that we had in the area previously. Spatial pattern being efficient. Staff concurred with the findings from the applicant. Suitability for development. We've already, I think, covered that as well. And I'm just going to, the conditions of approval have been modified slightly from what was presented. I think I've emailed these over to Melissa, but I'm just going to go through them quickly. They're a little bit different than what was in the presentation. So the following are the recommended conditions of approval from staff. The applicant shall address the lack of diversity within the proposed subdivision to align with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. The applicant shall address the strain on emergency response as the county maintains a level of service to existing development. The subdivision shall be subject to county engineering review at preliminary plan, confirmation that an acceptable school land dedication or fee in lieu has been approved by the school district at preliminary plan, determination of any public land dedication, proof of an acceptable resolution on the management of the Colorado Trail through the subdivision approved by the U.S. Forest Service, the Continental Trail Foundation, and the Continental Divide Trail Coalition and the developer. All construction on site shall be limited to the working hours of 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and the site shall be maintained with dark sky compliance. Site construction noise will comply with Colorado Revised Statute 2512-103. Number 9, an approved water supply plan is required at final plat, including compliance with the submittal requirements of section 311.4C5T. 10, all wildlife fencing shall be wildlife friendly in material and design. Trash receptacles shall be animal proof, Other attractants, bird feeders shall be unavailable to bears or taken down nightly. Pet cages or pens should be bear and lion proof. Hobby farming and ornamental vegetation are discouraged. These items shall be included in the HOA documents. Number 11, soil suitability for 2 leach fields shall be adequately identified at preliminary plan. Number 12, an approved access permit from CDOT. 13, confirmation of utility easements locations from Sangre de Cristo. And then 14, all statements made by the applicant in this application and in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And staff would just suggest that those conditions would need to be made in order to make the findings for a sketch plan approval. And I'm going to try and wrap up a little bit quickly. We've had a long presentation, so I will defer to the Planning Commission and the board if they have any questions of staff.
Do we have any planning commission members and or county commissioners that have questions of staff before I jump into public comment quickly? Great. Zoomers, if there are any of you that wish to have public comment, if you could please just go through and raise your hand with the little hand icon, that would be helpful. And then I'll go through with you each as I see you come up. And Chuck Fleener, sorry if I'm butchering that last name, you are up first.
Thank you very much. My name is Chuck Fleener. I own the property between Angel View 1 and 2, 6.25 acres. What's been said here today is very thorough. I don't have anything to add, and I fully support the responsible development. That's really all I have to say.
Great, thank you for keeping it short and sweet. Next, I showed Jim and Joe Pustizi.
That all.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. We are in favor of the development as well. We're adjacent to Angel View as well. We border their property to the west. We just are impressed about how much of the open space is being preserved.
Yep.
And what a win-win for the wildlife, win-win for the Twin Lakes area. Also the with the water issue.
That's awesome.
That is a great win for everyone. And I just appreciate that the Angel View team, how they want to work with the community. They want to be part of the community and always have. And I just commend them for just pressing in and pressing on and making this work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands up, but if you just don't know how to raise your, yeah, so, and I'm sorry, JHR Bear, if you can just state your name again, you can go next. You'll have to unmute yourself. You're muted. We might be able to ask her to unmute, and it might pop up for her. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Can, yes.
Okay, I'm John's wife, Carol Russo, and one of my concerns is the weekends, if there's any working going on, if that's going to be an obsolete choice for working on a weekend.
Okay. Do you have any other, and we can keep, what we'll do is we'll take questions, and then at the end, developers will be able to answer. But if you have any other comments or questions,
one more, I have one more on the fence lines of the roads, that there's not late night work done in all hours of the night, including early mornings before it's even dawn, or any harassment gestures made to neighbors, pedestrians, who's ever walking that road. of 26.
Okay,
It's been going on and for a long time, and I just want peace of mind, and everyone should be able to get along. That's all.
thank you. Larry Markham.
Hi, thanks, Larry Markham here. I just wanted to comment that the Planning Commission pretty much anticipated all the questions that I had wanted to be aired, and just want to say thank you for that.
Great, thank you. We have to give that credit to Anne. She's excellent staff. Okay, I don't see anybody else on Zoom with a hand up unless I'm missing anybody. If I am missing you, you can unmute yourself and speak. Otherwise, I will go to our room here for any public comment within our room. Okay, I don't see anybody else on Zoom. Do we have the list?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we only have it.
I'm just telling.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oops. Well, thank you, members of the Planning Commission and also Commission board members. And I will try to comment short, but as you can see, only none of my other neighbors show up here. I would really like to address the big elephant in the room. I frankly think that it's the wrong time, it's the wrong place, and it's certainly the wrong plan. And I will just mention three things. One is the developer's track record, his promises. And thirdly, complying with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. His track record is that he has this Angel View 1 development, trying to develop for now, what, 2-3 years? As far as I know, he's never sold a lot. All the trees are gone.
Right.
And I don't know whether he has water secured or not. And so instead of now bulldozing in another forest, why not do the prudent thing? If I were an investor, saying, hey, why don't you just go ahead with those houses or try to sell something before you avalanche even further into the environment. His track record, I think the whole water issue that you heard about at the beginning of the meeting is symbolizing how he's not compatible. Like when Anne says, oh, compatibility, by the way, means to most people being a good neighbor. This was the one little case where he could have done the right thing and the legal thing, and he chose not to do neither nor. It took being dragged in front of the water court that he's now happy about to have to agree to a settlement to do what was right and legally could have been done beforehand. And his stated claim to protect the environment with the beavers, he even has a little organization, Save Twin Lakes Beavers. That's the one thing that got killed. So both the beaver ponds above and below him, those are the only ponds within his reach, got drained. One of them got drained in the fall, so it kills the beaver. So the one stated goal of protecting the environment and protecting Twin Lakes beaver, he has not just failed, he has done the opposite. So in terms of us neighbors saying, sure, we always like to go forward and take somebody and say, hey, let's make the best out of it. But his track record has been, burn as many bridges as possible. So as far as I can tell, and I've read statements, what does Lake County struggle with? Create workforce housing, create good year-round jobs, and protect and enhance the environment. Well, it certainly doesn't do anything. Have $2, $3, $4 million part-time trophy homes inhabited for a couple of weeks by jet-setting funny people is like the last animal we want. I mean, how does that even fit into anything? It doesn't have to be next to Gordon Acres, it doesn't have to be next to Twin Lakes. I don't know any place where that's compatible. When they state, for example, on the water, and they did similar statement 2 years ago or 3 years ago, that their water plan, quote, is expected to avoid injury to any other water projects. Well, that's the one thing they did. Okay? They drained the public's, even though you're told they have no rights to that, a pond that has been there for I don't know how long and enjoyed by, you count them, tens of thousands of people that certainly people in Twin Lakes appreciate. And it's used for a water emergency pond. And it has beavers and a lonesome orange rusted car. Used to. That's the one thing he drained. Okay, when it would have been so easy for anybody to say, why don't you just turn your little pump down? You know, go a little slower and maybe take a little bit more. No, he had to fill his pond. There are words for that, but without regard to his neighbors or what they think what the impact is. So when it comes to the Lake County Development Code, you have the language. You know, it clearly says to preserve and improve the public health and the safety and the general welfare. In particular, compatibility, and I talked about that, to protect, not just protect, but enhance and avoid adverse environmental impacts. There is no way anybody can stand here and say there is no impact. Protect and enhance, this I'm quoting you on the code, you probably know, the county's natural and visual environment. When you look at the aerial view, you're 100 feet away from the trail, there are hardly any trees. I'm not sure what kind of conflict you're also inviting of having people in the campground that are like, oh, I want to build a campfire, and the people in the trophy homes are like, oh no, I don't want that kind of smoke. Or somebody hiking by and they're like, well, we don't want those people looking into my backyard. Manage growth to improve quality of life. Again, our current civilization warts and negative things, including trying now to create affordable housing after the fact, enhancing the environment of which less and less is left, growing trees when we should absorb CO2, it does the opposite. And so in closing, I could go on and on to address certain things. It seems radical, but it seems like in all these cases to decide on, you have the language, you just pick one of them, and it's just the wrong place. And it is laudable that they propose, now I don't know who came up with the idea of giving 1%. And you remember the slogan, the 1%ers. That is very nice. I give you 1%, I'll keep the 99%. Now please applaud me. Now, 1%, I will not scoff at it. You know, what is it? If you sell a lot for $1 million, you know, that's $10,000, I think. And then he gets to keep 21 million minus 200,000. So, you know, the peons get the crumbs, and the environment goes out the window, and we have more trophy homes to drive by or being laughed at. Not that I mind that, but I think it's just the wrong place, the wrong time, and the wrong plan.
Thank you.
I have 7 letters to read.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick, if anybody who has not spoken on Zoom who has a public comment, I just want to check in one last time, and then we're going to move on to the letters that we've received and then turn it back to the applicant for response. Okay, go ahead, Anne.
Okay, let's To whom it may concern, I am writing this letter in regard to the proposed Angel View development project in Twin Lakes, Colorado. I have worked in architectural design and development offices for most of my professional career, meaning that I understand the planning and approval processes required. My family has roots in Twin Lakes going back to the 1950s and still owns property in the village of Twin Lakes. We have witnessed many new construction projects over those years, but the village-like feel of the valley has stayed mostly intact through all of it. Twin Lakes has limited resources for those already there, and I strongly believe that a development of this nature would severely impact those existing resources. Moreover, I believe that this development would usher in a wave of new proposed projects and create a new precedent adversely impacting everyone in the valley. A project such as this would be more favorable to the city landscapes of Aspen or Vail, where the infrastructure has the capacity to provide such things as plumbing, gas, electricity, and water resources. I request that Lake County look closely at the limited access to this area, which in summer months is already congested to the point of bumper-to-bumper traffic, which this project would only worsen the gridlock. The wildlife in this area would also be detrimentally impacted by this new style of large development. Angel View owners have started to place no trespassing signs everywhere along their borders, showing that they truly are not part of the community, instead trying to create an elite, walled-off community. In closing, I write this not to try and block development in Twin Lakes. Everyone should have the right to enjoy the natural beauty, as I have for the past 50 years. I write this knowing that if Lake County creates a precedent of allowing a project of this scale to move forward, it will inevitably bring more and still larger proposals. The Twin Lakes Valley cannot support this, and it would be a loss to all of the people who come to enjoy this wonderful place. There is no place of this kind of development in this region. Let them build in places better suited to this kind of development. The current resources just do not support this kind of high-end living, and if approved, will bring many problems in the future for Twin Lakes and Lake County. Thank you, John Lang. Let's see. Oh, and this was Carol. I have your letter, Carol. Did you want me to, do you feel like I've covered everything, or did you want me to read it? Okay. My husband and myself have many concerns as follows. A, new rules and serious regulations have to be a key to this if moving forward. B, a year ago in a meeting, Alan said houses would be built off-site to retain noise. Was this a promise or not mentioned anymore when given his word in the past, which doesn't reassure any of us that would be followed through? C, no support or neighborly interest for community in general from Alan since day one, 7 years ago. And D, hours of operations 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., weekday routine work. E, weekends should not be acceptable when families should be enjoying the peace and tranquility of life that has been there for over 50 plus years. F, no harassment to neighbors adjoining the fence line, which to this day happens driving along fence line at all hours of day and night. 70 or below decibel use for the noise factor. Living in the village, I heard this generator 24/7 a straight week, deprived of sleep, anxiety, black smoke, pollution, nonstop. Quality of life is a factor here, as well as prevention of life. Safe noise life is the key to our community. So far, this is being destroyed immensely day by day. On behalf of the concerns above, we would like to reinforce that we need to bring our community back with dignity and pride. Angel View has insulted our intelligence and integrity far too long, and we're not going to give up. I am directly opposed of the size and density of any Twin Lakes development proposed by Alan Elias under the umbrella of Angel View 2 LLC. The problem I'm having is the 3-acre tract size, and the price per lot will naturally attract out of area luxury buyers. Phrased in the opposite, no middle income families will be able to buy and build an Angel View. I understand that the Angel View design may be a direct outgrowth of current land use and building codes. Notwithstanding these factors will contribute to a golf country club culture that has more in common with Pitkin and Eagle County than it does with traditional Lake County. Twin Lakes family culture, which is more suited to teachers, firefighters, truck drivers, construction trades, and merchants. My greatest concern of all is the Angel View development will contribute to the already runaway property tax problems we are already experiencing. The very first sale in Angel View will be used by the assessor as a comparable for every piece of property in Panarch and up the pass. This comparison is deeply unfair. At that point, there will be no reversal. Our property taxes will be permanently increased. This will drive out longtime residents and property owners. Thank you, Bill Burgess.
I have the wrong letter there, just now have to find that one. That's a response. Okay. Lake County Planning and Zoning regarding the sketch plan review for Angel View 2. Seeing a disregard for the environment and ecology of the area by the Angel View 1 developer and engineers last summer when they dried up the beaver ponds at the height of the fall color tourist season in Twin Lakes next to Highway 82, I would like to see the Planning Commission make written conditions on the sustainability of these ponds south of Highway 82 as part of any approvals of this new subdivision. The talk of environmental and ecology by the developer is empty based on their past actions. With the size and number of lots within the Angel View 1 and 2 subdivisions, the developers need to provide a community water and sewer system specifically to service usage within their boundaries without sacrificing the environment, wildlife, and the ecology of the surrounding area, not to mention the nearby residences and businesses in Twin Lakes Village and Gordon Acres. An environmental impact study should be part of the planning of this system. A traffic study to include access and egress to and from Highway 82 needs to be completed and installed by the developers. Water retention landscaping features within the subdivision need to be very minimal. At first glance, my major concern is piecemealing of the two subdivisions, when in fact the two subdivisions should be looked at together as a whole and their impact to the county. A series of smaller subdivision approvals which are connected may not adequately cover the area concerns when both or all are completed. Perhaps a relook at Angel View 1 subdivision should be part of the planning. How will Angel View 3 and 4, etc. look when added on to Angel View 1 and 2 in the future? As a business owner, I now see a big problem with employee housing in Lake County. Many employees will be required to maintain and service the total number of homes within these two subdivisions. The future quality of these subdivisions will depend on the availability of those workers, and Lake County needs to make sure housing is provided by this and future subdivision applicants. The impacts on fire, police, and schools will need to be closely evaluated by the county and provided for by the developers. Lake County budgets are already stretched, and it may be years before taxable development is actually realized. However, county services will need to be in place before people build within these subdivisions. Thank you in advance for your attention on the above conditions, Steve and Constance Erickson. I would like to voice my opposition to the Angel View 2 new major subdivision near the historic village of Twin Lakes. Ever since Angel View came to Twin Lakes many years ago with their big business plans for housing developments, there has been constant disruption and conflict, and there seems to be no end in sight. I oppose the proposed Angel View 2 development plans for the following reasons. The territory does not and will not lend itself to these major development expansions. Inadequate infrastructure and extremely limited resources, primarily the water supply, which can never support Angel View's ever-expanding development plans. The ongoing disruption caused by Angel View to the community of Twin Lakes and its many long-term homeowners like myself. Angel View has not been a good neighbor as they claim to be. Wildlife will be further displaced from their habitat, including the large elk herds that are using the trails through the planned subdivision. I strongly urge you and the commissioners of Lake County to wholly reject this project. Respectfully submitted, Brigitta Lang. Larry Markham, I had something, but I think that you're on. And I had something from you, Larry. But
I think you covered it in the, or I think it was covered in the planning committee review.
Very good. I have one more. If you give me just a moment, I saved the wrong email from one more resident in the area. So let me pull up the right email. Okay. If you could please also put this into your meeting tomorrow. As the adjacent neighbor of Allen, I would like to put in the following bullet points. Thank you, Lisa Marie Bemke. No noise after 5 p.m. on Monday through Friday for schedule of building noise. Weekends to also be quiet time for us to enjoy our family members without noise pollution. Respect for property lines with no tractor driving by after 5 p.m. No noise above 70 decibels of loudness and overall lighting after darkness, not to shine at neighbor's home after 5 p.m.
No future generators going on for lengthy periods of time throughout the night like they did for the whole situation when they were pumping water up to the pond. If we could also address the issue of what's going to happen if there's building on site, or more importantly, as Alan promised, he was going to build elsewhere and bring homes in. Nothing is in place with these items and creates uncertainty for us that live close to his property. Overall, Alan has not proven to be a decent neighbor and respectful for us in general, and we really need to have your voice to put place of action so that we all live in a place of harmony. Thank you for consideration. More importantly, Lisa Marie Bumke. And I think that's everything that staff has received.
Okay. At this time, if the applicant, one of the members of the applicant team wants to respond to the comments, if we can try to make it sort of concise, that would be helpful, but yes.
I'm communicating with my team.
Okay.
This modern world. Yeah, so I know we definitely heard the concerns about being a good neighbor. And I think in our presentation, what we tried to do is address from our perspective the actions that we're taking to address those kinds of concerns and comments. So I don't know if our team has anything they want to add to that or not. So I think we've given you a lot of information and detail. So if there are some specific questions, we can answer those.
Thank you. At this time, I know that Commissioner Marcella has to get going here in a minute. Do you have any outstanding questions or comments that you want to make as part of public hearing before you head out?
No, not right now. I just was wondering if the presentation from the applicant, if we can see that after, just to, I couldn't see all of it on the email, so I was wondering if you could just over.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And then I don't have any questions at this time. I haven't even looked at this one. Thank you, Heather.
Planning commissioners or county commissioner, anybody have any questions or discussion points that you'd like to talk about before we go into closing the public hearing?
Just a quick question. I saw the drainage report and I think an aquifer report was mentioned. I didn't see that unless I missed it.
Yeah, I think you want me to address that?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, in our resubmittal materials, I think you said they got sent out,
Yes.
didn't they? Yes. So in that, from Martin and Woods, yeah, that letter, there's a graphic that was really meaningful to me, not being a technical person in that area. And there's a substantial amount of water underneath this property, and there's a very small amount of that we'll actually use in order to serve the development. So that's the bottom line message, and that's what is included. It sort of demonstrates how much water is there and how much we're going to be using. I don't have that memorized, but we can certainly make sure that you get that before the next hearing.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I'll just make sure it's in the top of your inbox
Yeah.
again.
Any other questions from planning commissioners or county commissioner before we entertain a motion to close the public hearing? I just want to make sure I had some notes, but I don't think I had. Something that required that conversation. Oh, I do have one quick question. The sprinkler requirements, somewhere it's mentioned that it's, and sorry, I just don't remember, Angel View 1 had that requirement too. How is that a requirement because of covenants and architectural design guidelines being able to be changed by HOAs down the road? Is it just put in, is that the hope, is that nobody would remove that at some point?
I do think it's a plat note. I would have to make sure that that's correct, but I think it's a plat note that we memorialized on on final plat for Angel View 1, because for that very reason.
So something that can't be reversed.
And I could address that real quickly as well. You wanted, it is a plat note, and it's also a condition of the approval and the preliminary plan approval that's memorialized in the county records. So it's covered in it, and it's in the covenants as well, but you're right, covenants are private and could be amended, but it's separately memorialized on the plat and in your approval conditions, which we accepted.
Right, and you know, moreover that when, you know, my predecessors or whomever, the important places is on the plat.
Right, because nobody else goes
nobody's
through
gonna-
these.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
great that it was a condition, but it's memorialized on the plat.
okay, great. That was the only thing I had. Any other questions? Okay, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing portion of this meeting.
I'll make a motion that we close the public portion of our meeting dated November 17th, 2022.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, the county commissioners may leave. Anybody else may also leave if they would like to, but you're welcome to stay. We just can't entertain any further public comment or comment from the developer at this point. It's purely a listening session from here. We will then deliberate and hopefully come up with a motion of recommendation to the county commissioners. Our decision tonight here will be a recommendation, just that, a recommendation to the county commissioners. And they can choose to follow or not that recommendation at their next, is it on the schedule for their next meeting?
It will be, let's see when that will be. Let's see. So it won't be until December 6th, correct, Tim? December
Correct.
6th is the next.
So December 6th is when the county commissioners will then take our recommendation into consideration and make their decision at that point. Otherwise, thanks for being a part of the process. Thank you for all your public comments. Thanks for being here, and we appreciate everybody willing to be a part of this process.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, planning commissioners. I know there's only a couple of us, but who would like to start on thoughts and comments? Or if anybody wants to start the motion, but yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking, I think we could kind of quickly clarify on the condition just around the construction hours. I do think just making sure that it says Monday through Friday, or if that's what we think could be appropriate, but to me that seems like a fairly obvious move.
And you would open it up to state guidelines?
That was noise.
That's noise.
Okay, so two separate issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Construction, number 7 is construction on site would be limited to working hours of 8 a.m. to 7, but then the next one is the noise would comply with that CRS. So we know they're
Gotcha.
kind of related, but
Right. I didn't know if the state guidelines had anything.
No, and I can send you over, I can email you right now, the Colorado 2512-103 is only, just open that up and all. You want to take a look at it.
And that's fine. That's
Okay.
specifically on noise. That,
It is,
that
yep.
answers the question. Thank you.
So to kind of address some public comment tonight, and quite honestly, some of them mirroring my own thoughts, my own thoughts about this development going into this meeting tonight, and that is that it is tough. It's tough. It's tough to essentially not have a track record right now. It's tough that Angel View 1 isn't off the ground yet. We don't know if these $1 million+ lots are going to sell. If they don't, what happens? I mean, I guess you just have land that sits there and then the developer has to either lower the price or sell the property, or I don't really know, but I think it's all up to individuals' personal preferences on whether I mean, I think Jan did a good job of saying, trophy homes, like there's a lot of places who love that. They're beautiful, beautiful homes that sit on the mountainside and they're gorgeous and they do blend in with the architecture. But it is it does add a different portion to the community. And I think that Anne's notes, just because there's few lots and they are on these larger lots, doesn't mean that type of lot owner becomes minimal in impact. I think that there's a lot of impact. The property assessment that Bill Burgess brought up is another really big one. We've seen this come up before with a different developer who bought some land at really, really high prices. It drove everybody's property values up. And then he wasn't able to do what he was going to do with them. But in the meantime, everybody's stuck with these really high valuations. And I don't think that there's enough credit given to how big of an impact that can be on people who live here. I think there's a really easy lens to look for and say, oh, well, now your property is just worth $1 million. Well, if I want to live here, I don't want to pay the taxes on my $1 million property now. You know what I mean? So in the amount of money that increases their tax bill every year is substantial. And for some people, it will be a deal breaker for them as far as those assessments go. So I don't think that that's something to just ignore, I guess. I think that as far as the way that this is written out, it seems to be super thoughtful and it meets a lot of the criteria that we need it to meet and things like that. The piece that I have a hard time reconciling is if it does meet, your consistency with the lands around it and that compatibility piece, is that there? And then I go back to the Angel View 1 isn't done yet, and I'm a little bit skeptical. I guess it's hard to know. We don't have a development like this in our county, so we don't know the impacts of what a development like that is going to bring us. And so it's really hard to be like, yeah, let's do another one. So I alone here am having a little bit of a hard time with this file in that way. And if it does go forward, there's a couple of notes I made with like the transfer fee for the housing authority. I think just based on the little bit that they talked about in there, I think I would love for them to be pursuing that more than the other options. I think that seems like in perpetuity 1% sale every time somebody sells a house and lot in there just seems like much more long-term help than a one-time housing authority give. And then building affordable housing someday. I mean, I guess I just don't have a lot of faith in that being anytime soon. So just for anybody to be able to build anything anytime soon, not these guys specifically, but so the transfer fee seems was kind of an exciting thing to hear. The sustainability of the beaver ponds, I know that they went into that there's some water court things that they've addressed to feel like they've got that, but I would love to see that still some sort of condition. I don't know necessarily how to read that. In that the sprinkler requirements and the fencing, and I don't know, again, because covenants can be changed, I kind of want number 10 to say all fencing. If there's any fencing that becomes allowed out there, it has to meet these, and that becomes a plat note as well as the sprinkler requirements. So I just spewed all of kind of my thoughts at once there.
I did have one question, and it might not be able to be clarified now, but the 1%, would that be a levy at initial sale as well? Or is it only on secondary transfers?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't think they have to have that answer today because they don't need it until preliminary. So this would be us advising them to move in that direction
And that
or,
would
you know,
be
saying
something I
that,
would
but
want to, yeah,
You
I'd
do-
want to see that
I
on
think I would say that it would happen
origination
originally.
sales as well.
Mhm.
No, excellent points, and yeah, being a good neighbor goes an awful long way. I also wonder if we run into a drought problem as we've had for so long, and there is not enough water to service either of the two beaver ponds. What happens then? I know that there's a limit as to only over a set cubic foot per minute can it go into the secondary, but what happens if there's a severe enough drought that it's impacted regardless?
Mm.
What happens then? And how do they play with their neighbors at that point? Over and above really obnoxious generators and pumps.
Mhm. Lupe?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, I want, also I have a meeting afterwards. I emailed them, so I might told them I'll be a little bit late, but just letting y'all know that I have a little bit pressing with time. But just echoing what you were saying, Heather, I'm just conflicted. It's just, I see the value of adding more homes, but I'm more concerned of just having affordable homes in our county. I see that a lot of people are moving into the county and there's very limited amount of housing. And not providing affordable housing is an issue. And so if these homes are being sold at high values, it would just not be helpful to address some of the high housing crisis that we have in the county. And I think more affordable, like more homes will bring more folks, but like we don't know what the repercussions that Angel View 1 has in the environment. And so I just don't know. I'm just very conflicted as some of the things that you were sharing, Heather, and it just like I want more people like to be able to see Leadville and also Twin Lakes, right? Like, and having homes for folks to be able to live in. And so I am conflicted. It's just like I want to preserve the area, but it's also like we cannot say like we cannot have more folks coming in. It's just like this tension of that exists. And so that's where I'm at. It's just, yes, like I want to preserve the natural environment, but it's also like we cannot say like no, like I cannot have more people coming around. It's just like let's keep it this way. It should be done in a way that is harmonious with the environment. And so I don't know how like with Angel View 1 and how that is going to go about. And so that's where I'm at. That's where my thoughts are at.
Thanks, Lupe.
I think if we were to approve with conditions tonight, I think a lot of it would be, they'd put a lot of pressure on that preliminary plan. I think the affordable housing is a big piece. Is it, it's not a project that I personally get excited about for kind of the same reasons, just because I don't think it actually does a lot to serve residents today. But I think if you could leverage it and figure out some affordable housing solutions and some environmental protection, that would make it more attractive down the road.
One question I had, Anna, and maybe you can help me remember how, because I know we just haven't had a ton of subdivisions where the open space wasn't just either utilized by the community or public. And so in this case, the majority of their open space is just outside of a building envelope, which I guess in my opinion feels like it's not necessarily what the original code was intending, but maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
You know, we spent a lot of time talking about that in Angel View 1, you know, when there was the emergency services facility and the thought of, you know, we kind of got to a little bit of an impasse because public open space in a gated community doesn't, you know, really benefit to the public. Now, the trail, my understanding from the applicant or from what I heard Melissa say tonight, it does look like the county will have to potentially also be a player in that. So, you know, it is a limited amount of public open space. And I think that's just the nature of a gated private resort community.
Well, but like, so like Grand West, for instance, their open space isn't public, but it's still like, I was trying to read the code on how we have it in the land development code, and you know, things not counted as open space and things that are counted as open space. And there's like the section that things that count as open space, you can count things like water bodies, lands within critical wildlife habitat areas, riparian areas, and 100-year floodplains that are preserved as open space can count towards that minimum standard, even when they are not usable or accessible to the residents. But all other open space lands should be conveniently accessible from all occupied structures within the PD. So like, I don't understand that last sentence necessarily. Maybe that's some clarification that we needed and do at some point. But when I read that, I kind of, in I guess all the years that we've approved subdivisions, like, I didn't help with Westwoods, but Westwoods, for instance, you know, they have their percentages on the back side of the subdivision, and it's all public, or it's Westwood, but the owners all get access to it. It's not on individual people's lots that you have this open space that nobody gets. It does do a good job of making it so that, like, I do like the design in here of how they've created these building envelopes, but to me, that's what they are. They're still building envelopes. It does provide this all to be scenically open space, so not built upon, which maybe that's the intent. I just thought that the 20%, the reason that we had the 20% open space was to provide that extra space that was subdivision owned and or accessible, whether it's public or within a development. And so that piece has been a little bit hard for me to really understand. If all we're saying is that people can have big backyards and that counts towards open space, to me, that's not open space. But so that was one other thing that I guess I feel pretty conflicted about. And that could just be something that we need to address in our code, and it's not specific to these guys. But my perception or my interpretation of the code is that open space is meant to be either public and or subdivision accessible land.
Correct.
And
That's
if
correct.
that's the case, then the 20% isn't met on this application.
That's right, the gated community precludes any type
If
of
we're being public.
open use.
Yeah. Like I remember like Mountain Pines, for instance, they have this like land all the way around the subdivision that can be used as a trail, and it didn't have to be public, but it had to be an easement that everybody within the subdivision could use and utilize. And that's how they continue to make the 20%. So that's where it gets this, and it sounds like maybe we did it with Angel View, but I thought we did it with Angel View, like you said, because of the parcel that was potentially going to be a fire thing, which,
Right, and let me see that section real quick.
yeah, I'm having a hard time because
I
it's
don't
actually
think
under
it's-
PD, but
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't think we
gonna-
actually put, I think we put a suggestion, I don't think we actually put the percentage in the new code. So let me pull it up.
Okay.
I don't think that we actually pull out the exact, I think that we give a suggestion.
in the under
Major
major
subdivision.
subdivision. And that could be, so then if it's just a suggestion in the code, then that, because what I'm reading is
PUD, but I
The
do,
PUD
I don't think that, let me pull it up. That while you continue to.
Yeah.
talk through that. And I would say that while the area of influence or the building envelopes, that's not dissimilar to Elk Trail. Elk Trail are
Totally.
3-acre lots. They have very minimal building lots to, as much for the residents to preserve view sheds and, buffer. And so this isn't a unique model. We've certainly seen that in other subdivisions in Lake County.
Talk of the animal-friendly fencing makes me think that all of these lot dividers are actually going to be fences. The entire subdivision will be fenced individually, not around the themselves. It's just a visualization I have. I have no idea whether that's true or not.
Yeah, and they could, and that was where the fencing to me then wouldn't be wildlife friendly. Well, I guess it says just material.
Right, that's heightened material, that's not anything other, but I'm visualizing all of these being private lots boundaried by
And I didn't
animal-friendly
see
fencing.
anything specific in the application, but I could have missed it because there's a lot in there. But if the developer was planning on saying in there, I want to say that I remembered, at least in Angel View one, that they were going to have the rules of not fencing your perimeters also. But we could certainly make that a condition that it becomes also a flat note that you can't fence perimeters, that fencing is kept at a minimum. I do think like one thing that Elk Run did, or Elk Trail, what one is it, Elk Trail did
Elk
wrong,
Trail.
was trying to say no fencing at all, because all normal people have some sort of animal that they need to contain correctly, so.
I do think they probably can't fence outside of the areas of influence. Let me just make sure that that's correct. Melissa, is that true?
I believe, and Bart, you can back me up on this, that they can fence the perimeter of their individual lot.
That's really the intent that I'm seeing.
Okay. I just
It
wanted
would
to,
just be nice to have some clarification.
right. I didn't know if the area,
Yeah.
because the area of influence, if it's exclusive of any kind of vertical.
Yeah, Bart, did you hear that question?
Can
Are we talking about
fencing
the perimeter boundaries of the lots?
Of the lots, yeah.
Can you have fencing outside of the area of influence?
I don't remember specifically, I don't believe that we're permitting that in Angel View 1. And that there could be a perimeter fence around the project, but it's got to be a wildlife friendly fence, so that your basic, kind of split rail or barbless wire, with a kick wire underneath that doesn't have any barbs on it and no barbs on the top. Basically, we have covenant restrictions in Angel View 1 that are modeled on the Colorado Parks and Wildlife requirements for fencing. And they have different options, but they're all designed to be wildlife friendly. And I believe we provided, you could obviously follow up on this, that people aren't permitted to fence their property boundaries individually, because we don't want that kind of cut up interference with movement, and it's visually unattractive.
And you get further condition if you
A further condition.
That's easy enough to address with a condition.
Just have an entire subdivision with no trespassing signs along every boundary. Scares me. And we're seeing some signs of that already.
So standard zoning wouldn't have an open space dedication, but I'm just looking at major subdivision just because I didn't do that.
I thought the major subdivision had it. Unless all of those have been PUDs, but I didn't think Mountain Pines was a PUD.
I would toast that one.
Any other thoughts though while Ann is? And we can also get to where, we make a motion and then we can deliberate on that motion and either make amendments or what have you as well. What's the section for that? It's 3:16.3. We don't have it. We don't have that requirement. That's sketch for. Six. Yeah. No, there's not a. Okay. You're thinking of PDM and. What was the hope of?
Kind of like down that, just.
Well, I guess I just wanted to make sure that it was in compliance of it, but if it's not, then, or I mean, if it's not applicable, six. Okay, aside from that though, does anybody else have any other thoughts or questions or condition changes or?
Not allowing a division, not allowing a development like this. Your blanket terms is just burying our heads in the sand. I think that if conditions are properly met, then it.
I think Lupe maybe had to go, but
Yeah.
Abby, did you have any other thoughts or questions, or do you guys somebody want to make a motion?
I don't have anything else.
You can reach us at admissions@schoolforethics.org.
Yeah.
You had some amendments you wanted to make to a motion.
I just, I liked Abby's to number 7, making it Monday through Friday.
And 8 to 5 or 8 to 7?
I feel like 8 to 7 is reasonable, but open to thoughts on that.
It would seem like a worthwhile compromise if we kept it to Monday through Friday.
Number 10 on fencing, I just wanted to say that any fencing would have to be wildlife fencing and kept to a minimum and would be included on the HOA docs as well as on the plat.
Kept to a minimum around the building envelope.
Yeah, area of influence, I think they call it.
Right. Do we want to say anything about boundaries as far as fencing boundaries? I think it was suggested that that's not done in Angel View 1. I don't know if there's a way to stipulate that it not be done in Angel View 2.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is like, even though I do feel like we have to look at these as, I know they're two different applications, considered two different subdivisions. They essentially are working together. So like that, keeping it cohesive would be ideal. But that being said, if there was something we missed on Angel View 1, I don't think that precludes us from changing it here as far as that goes. If we missed that on Angel View 1.
We're talking about lot line fencing is what we're discussing there, right?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the boundaries of the actual subdivision. But yeah, we could do that too. We're
Well, the
illuminating.
gated subdivision, it's going to be fenced all the way around. Is
Mhm.
the assumption.
Right. And so that would be the wildlife fencing.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Well,
you're
and-
saying, but we want to not allow.
Fencing only allowed around the area of influence.
Yeah, because even if it's wild, I mean, just still, it stops wildlife.
Even wildlife fencing is fencing.
It will, and it still precludes wildlife.
Right. Is there anything else?
I had that this somehow wording something in there that the sustainability of the beaver ponds is addressed in preliminary plat.
The only thing that is not part of this
Yeah,
application.
I don't know that that's an option.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's not.
Where can we address the? I really like the percentage of sale toward
So it's
affordable
a-
housing. How can that be addressed, or can it be addressed at this point, or is it just a suggestion that we
I
put
think
out
we're
there?
saying it out loud that we hope that they're going to come to an agreement with.
Yeah, also, but number one is your condition that says that they're going to address the diversity. I believe
Okay,
is
so
number one or
just
number two.
keep it that generic.
Yes, I do think, I think that we also need to kind of vet transfer tax in Lake County, and if we have any problems locally with that, I think that we have talked about transfer taxes, and I do think
There are some barriers
that
there.
we potentially have a barrier as a county and not as a city. So that really
So
needs to
potentially
go
that's not a
through.
good option.
So keeping it vague at this point, I think Bart brought in some really great potential strategies. Love to hear where he's been able to find successes in that, and it'll aid in then bringing a solution to preliminary. But I think keeping it vague right now is the best solution.
Is there anybody opposed to a motion for approval with amended conditions?
I mean, absolutely make a motion.
Abby, anything?
Did you have any other conditions you wanted him to add in this original motion?
No, I think we're good.
I also agree. I think we're good with the motions we talked
So
about.
if you're a good match for main postmaster, we'll work with you and your family.
2 meetings. I'll make a motion. I move the planning commission recommend approval of the Lake County Board of Commissioners, file 22-37, Angel View 2 subdivision sketch plan with the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall address the lack of diversity within the proposed subdivision to align with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. Number 2, the applicant shall address the strain on emergency response as the county maintains the level of service to existing development. Number 3, the subdivision shall be subject to county engineering review at preliminary plan. Number 4, confirmation that an acceptable school land dedication or fee in lieu, as discussed, has been approved by the Lake County School District at preliminary plan. Number 5, determination of any public land dedication. Number 6, proof of an acceptable resolution on the management of the Colorado Trail through the subdivision, approved by the U.S. Forest Service, Colorado Trail Foundation, Colorado Divide Trail Coalition, thank you, and the developer. Number 7, all construction on site should be limited to Monday through Friday working hours of 8 to 7 p.m. The site should be maintained with dark sky compliance at all times. Number 8, site construction noise shall comply with C.R.S. 25-12-103. Number 9, an approved water supply plan is required at final plat, including compliance with the submittal requirements of sections 3.11.4 C, 5, and T. Number 10, all fencing should be wildlife friendly in material and design and should be kept to a minimum around the area of influence on each lot. Trash receptacles will be animal proof. Other attractants, bird feeders, should be unavailable to bears or taken down nightly. Pet cages or pens should be bear proof and lion proof. Hobby farming and ornamental vegetation are discouraged. These items should be included in the HOA documents. Number 11, soil suitability for 2 leach fields should be appropriately identified at preliminary plan. 12, approved access permits from CDOT. Number 13, confirmation of utility easement locations from Sangre de Cristo. Number 14, all statements made by the applicant in this application and in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And further finding pursuant to the Lake County Development Code, section 3.16.3, subsection H, that is conditioned the sketch plan is consistent with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. As conditioned, the proposed sketch plan is in substantial conformance with the express purposes, intents, goals, and policies of the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. Number 2, the sketch plan is conditioned is consistent with the Lake County Land Development Code. The proposed sketch plan materially complies with all of the standards of this chapter and all other provisions of this Land Development Code, including but not limited to the applicable standards of Chapter 4, District Regulations, Chapter 5, Use Regulations, Chapter 6, Development Standards, Chapter 10, Roadway Design Standards, and Chapter 11, Floodplain Damage Prevention. Number 3, the sketch plan spatial pattern is efficient. The proposed sketch plan demonstrates efficient development patterns, utility design, and installation in public and private infrastructure through layout and design. The sketch plan avoids requiring duplication or premature extension of public infrastructure or resulting in a leapfrog pattern of development. Number 4, the sketch plan is conditioned has suitability for development. The property proposed to be subdivided is suitable for development, considering its topography, environmental resources, and natural or man-made hazards that may affect the potential development of the property from existing and probable future public improvements to the area. Number 5, the sketch plan is conditioned has compatibility with surrounding uses. The proposed sketch plan is generally compatible with the existing and currently permissible future uses of the adjacent land and other substantially impacted land, services, or infrastructure improvements to the area. And number 6, adequate facilities. The applicant has demonstrated that the development proposed in the sketch of preliminary plan will be provided adequate facilities for potable water supply, sewage disposal, solid waste disposal, electrical supply, fire protection, and roads will be reasonably located in relation to schools, police, and fire protection, and emergency medical services, all while maintaining adequate levels of service to existing development.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second the
Thank you.
motion. Oh, go for it, Abby.
Okay, we'll count Lupe as the second on that. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
The only thing that I don't know if it would be helpful to clarify, but just in that very first condition, we say the lack of diversity. Should we say the lack of diversity in housing?
That's the, it's discussed in the comp plan, or it's discussed in the staff report specifically. I would just
And then-
suggest it.
Okay. And then it's
But-
the staff report's recorded with, right? So I just didn't. When you read it there, it made me think of it really quickly, but I understand the process that we can capture it.
Yeah, I kind of like it being left a little vague.
Okay, any other thoughts or discussions? Okay, I'm gonna do roll call vote. Joey Edwards,
Aye.
Lupe Bobadilla,
Aye.
Dahlman,
Aye.
Heather Lynn, no. Okay, that recommendation will carry on to the county commissioners and be put in front of them on the 6th. And I think that's all we have on our agenda tonight. So we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
I
will make a
move we
motion.
adjourn.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, guys.
Thank you for a very thoughtful consideration. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
If